Hey guys, Jens here, and today I'm gonna talk about Burning Crusade. Um, why, for me, Shadowlands is the waiting room for Burning Crusade, the main reason, and the difference in terms of game, in terms of PvP, obviously, because I always talk about PvP. But before I do that, um, I have details on this one game. A game we lost, by the way, even though I did 3.7k DPS, I think I was doing average of 3.8k, 3.9k during the game against a turbo, and we lost the game. Um, my my Shadow Priest and my Holy Paladin don't really have the best gear, but the reason why I'm showing you this is kind of the bridge between why the game right now sucks and why I'm waiting for TBC. So I do this amount of damage. I pretty much almost triple everyone's damage in arena, and we still lose a game. And the reason why I tripled everyone's damage is because the positioning of the enemy team was terrible, but it didn't matter. Paladin got a lot of wings procs, and the enhancement shaman I think killed a lot. Let's see. There you go. The enhancement shaman did almost the same healing as my paladin, and we lost the game because even though I did this amount of damage, I don't think people dropped below 50%. And I'm gonna use this as a bridge to why, in my opinion, TBC is just a better game, and why TBC for me, Shadowlands is just a waiting room for TBC. Um, I think the game right now it's beyond saving, regardless of the tuning, because the class design itself is just terrible. And even though they added a lot of stuff back to the classes, the way they function, the way they deal damage, is still extremely bad design and an extreme. It's super easy to do damage, and in TBC it's easy to do damage, but the way you deal damage, for example, casters, they need to cast. It's not like right now in Shadowlands where Mage Pops Combust does all of this damage in instants, or a Boomy does all of his damage in instants, and then that would actually be fine if all casters were kind of the same. But then you have warlocks that need to cast every single damage spell pretty much, except for dots, but dots don't do damage. And before I start, I saw a tweet from Infernion, the warlock, a previous tournament warlock, and I think you're gonna relate to the tweet if you play a warlock. And I'm gonna read it to you. Not having the most fun in WoW lately, even though Shadowlands is really good in theory. Maybe the gaming in general, just isn't for me anymore. And then he has a few comments on the tweet, and some of them ask him if he has these thoughts while is playing Warlock, and he says yes, I think. And this just shows, and I could relate to this tweet from Infernian because I felt the same yesterday, especially after this game. This team we faced, and this was really low MMR. It was only 2k or 2.1k MMR at this point, and I could relate to the tweet today when I read it because it's just not fun. If you don't play meta right now, so Holy Paladin, a Fire Mage, a Windwalker, Warrior, Enhancement Shaman, a Rat, mostly those classes, you don't have fun. Because the game is really poorly designed to a point where a team can get I can do the whole damage of I can do the damage of a whole team and still lose the game. And the fact that I did this much damage is due to, there you go, Malefic Raptures. I'm free casting, right? So if I'm free casting and I get 33 Malefic Raptures and I get 5k average Malefic Raptures, it should mean that the enemy team loses the game, right? Because they are not lining. The Paladin is also taking damage, and I'm pretty sure if I go into, there you go, like I do pretty much the same damage to everyone, and this means that their positioning was really bad, right? So they should lose the game because they are facing a wizard cleave, and the melee cleave against a wizard cleave, it's all about positioning. Um, and the warrior, you can see, takes less damage than the others guys because he's just in defensive stance with the ignore pain, and there's really no risk of doing that. Like, and this is the bridge to TBC. In TBC, you have a lot of retarded shit like Maze Stun, like Wind Fury procs, like resists on spells, on stuns as well. For example, if you're undead rogue and you face an orc rogue and all of this, and like the orc rogue it's really low and you try to kidney shot, it can actually resist your kidney shot. Then he kidney shots you and he kills you. This is really retarded, obviously, and there's a lot more in terms of retardedness, if you want to call it, in TBC arena, but you will never that will never be the norm. So if you're a better player than the enemy or you're a better team than the other team, you will usually win. That's why you had back in the day, and you will have it. You will have it in TBC Classic when it releases. You had teams with insane win losses, like 90%, 80, 89%, like 95%. You had teams with 99% back in the day. And while maybe you don't see 90%, you will definitely see a lot of high win losses from teams because regardless of what you're facing, if you're a better player overall, you have a chance to win. Even if you're playing, for example, a red paladin, if you're a better player overall, you will probably win. And that is no longer true in World of Warcraft. And I said something about back when Classic and people were asking for Classic. I always said something. I feel like when people ask for this kind of stuff, like Classic, Vanilla, and for example now you have a lot of people asking for Classic TBC. I think it's because the live game is failing, and even though Shadowlands it's a way better experience overall when compared to BFA, especially for PvPers, the lack of caring and the lack of tuning and the lack of love towards the PvP community um, showed uh, and is showing more in Shadowlands than in any other expansion before, because you have this whole meta that has been the same pretty much since BFA, where even though people were complaining about Destro because of the amount of haste they had, the main problem were actually Holy Paladins with Ineffable, Windwalkers with a lot of Versa, and Fire Mages, right? And those classes didn't get fixed, and all of the sudden you have almost the exact same meta, where those classes are just insane. If you face a Windwalker in Arena, and then okay, before and then you have this problem where some classes or some specs are just not possible to play. And while, for example, in TBC you have specs like, for example, Elemental Shaman won't see that much play in 2v2 or 3v3. They have a spot in Arena in 5v5. And I think that's the main issue, is that since the devs try to please everyone, um, with every spec being good for everything instead of every class. You have the case of warlocks. Like, For some reason, Infernian is not enjoying gaming right now, and it's because he plays a Warlock. If he played a Fire Mage or a Windwalker, he would have the time of his life because the classes are broken, right? And when you focus too much on making the specs good for everything instead of making the class good for everything, this is what happens. Where a class like Warlocks, and we are very vocal, but I think we need kind of like someone at a higher rating that just goes straight to ham on his streams. And Chanimals does this, but it doesn't really tweet that much. It doesn't really put everything out here, but it's being sponsored, so we can't really tell the devs to fuck off and fucking fix a class, right? But but uh, but yeah, like you get to a point where okay, every spec needs to be good, but all of the sudden you have classes that are not good, and warlocks are not good. I made a video about Destro, and Destro it's pretty decent in arena, especially after buffs. It's actually one of the better or the best spec for warlocks if they want to do arena. But I think after BFA and Legion and playing mainly Destro for most of those expansions in PvP, Warlocks just want to play Affliction. It's just normal. You've played 2 years as Destro in Arena, right? So it's only normal that the most fun spec, I would say, for me at least, and I feel like 90% of the Warlocks feel like this. The most fun spec is being left out in Arena for around 4 years now. So we just want to play Affliction. We don't really want to play these other specs. Some Warlocks love Demo. I don't know why. I think it's super oppressive, and I don't think it should be good for Arena. But yeah, some Warlocks love Demo. Some Warlocks still love Destro, even though they played it for 2 years in a row without having any other chance of playing Affli or Demo. But this is one of the main reasons why I want TBC Classic as well, because the meta is set, and and you don't really have to wait for Blizzard to actually care about PvP and tune stuff, right? Um, you when you go into TBC Classic, you know like you're gonna get Mace stunned, you're gonna get Wind Furied, you're gonna get all of this stuff. You're gonna get resistant on fear against priests because of the resistance. Like you know this stuff is bound to happen, especially if you played back in the day, and you know that this is gonna be really frustrating, but it will never be the reason why you die, or at least 90% it won't be the reason why you don't win a game. Unless, like I said, you try to stun someone as a rogue and they resist you, obviously. But like, the main difference between TBC and Shadowlands in PvP is that the game makes sense. Um, for example, right now, reds, they can pop bubble, they can go in, they can blind you, and they can kill you while you're in a CC because it doesn't break to holy damage. And while doing top maximum amount of damage, and in TBC that ain't really possible because if you bubble, you get forbearance, and if you get forbearance, you can't wings. And even if you bubble and you have a lot of damage, I don't know, you do 50% less damage in bubble. The game makes sense. You can't be aggressive and defensive at the same time. You can't have this kind of degenerate gameplay where you just go in on a horse, max speed, you use CC, and you kill them in the CC you use. This can't happen. And and this won't happen in TBC. For example, Paladins. Like I said, the game in TBC makes sense, and there's a risk versus reward. Paladins, again, if you bop someone, a melee, he can't attack. He can't physically hurt other people. He can't be hurt either, but he can't attack. So in TBC and up until I think it was MOP, it was very clear you either play defensive or you play offensive. You can't do both at the same time. And that's what I talked about when I talked about Holy Paladins in my last video. That was what I was saying. A TSG can't be aggressive and defensive at the same time. back in Wrath of the Lich King. But in current game, they can because they use AMS. Then they have BOP or spellboarding if they are playing with a Proto Paladin, and they can keep the aggression without having to take any kind of punishment, and that is a bad design. There's no risk in doing that. The only risk is after that you can actually probably die, but it doesn't really happen if you play with a Holy Paladin because he pops wings and presses spacebar, right? He just presses spacebar and tops you while doing this. The game at the moment makes no sense, and in TBC the game makes sense. If if you pop wings, you can't bubble for another minute, so you can actually be punished. There's a risk versus reward. The same with warriors, and with warriors right now they go defensive stance. They still stay in with the double hander obviously, and they do the almost the same amount of damage. The 20%, it's not really a penalty, and there's no penalties to rage regeneration. There's no penalties in what abilities they can use, so they just do their normal rotation. And in TBC, that doesn't happen. You can't rend. I think maybe you can, but you can't use all the abilities in defensive stance in TBC. So that means that you have moments where you're aggressive and moments where you're defensive, which is what makes sense. But right now, those moments are all together, and you have comps that don't get punished from doing that, especially Holy Paladin comps, like I said so many times. Um, so yeah, that's why for me TBC is way better because the game and the gameplay in arenas, it's kind of like chess. You have moments where you can be really aggressive, and you have moments where you can be defensive, or you should be defensive. And if you don't recognize those moments, you will lose. For example, one of the most skilled matchups, in my opinion, is Shadow Priest Rogue into Shadow Priest Rogue against Warrior Druid. Both of those comps are extremely good in 2v2, and both of those comps can win. The Shadow Priest wins if the Warrior can't be aggressive, but the Warrior wins if the Shadow Priest can't be aggressive. So you have this chess match where the main uh, the main focus is to kill the Warrior, obviously, because you can't really CC the druid that much. You have blind, you have fear, and you have silence, but you can't really CC him that much. So you want to kill the warrior in the kidney shots. But if the warrior is good, he can intervene a blind, he can try to intervene a blind. But if the warrior is good, or it's better than the Shadow Priest team, then it means that he knows and he recognizes when he can be aggressive, and those moments are very scarce in that matchup. Because if you get caught up without sword and shield, because armor actually matters in TBC, if you get caught up without sword and shield and without being in defensive stance when they go on you, you die pretty much. Um, but at the same time, if you don't die during those times, they will feed you rage, which means that you can do more damage after those times. So that's the time to be aggressive. But you need to check your buffs and debuffs to see if you actually have HOTS. Else you can get into a position where the druid can't really heal you and you die. And this is the difference between Shadowlands and TBC or Wrath of the Lich King or Kata or even MOP, where positioning is really important because you don't have as many defensives. You don't have almost any external defensive cooldowns, like Iron Bark doesn't exist, so you can't just Iron Bark the warrior and the warrior goes to town, he blade storms around, he can't be CC'd, and he kills both the Shadow Priest and the Rogue. No, that can't happen because those type of things don't exist there, so you need to be smart. You, you don't need to be super fast and do 360s. Well, no, you need to be smart. And that's the difference between TBC Arena and the Shadowlands Arena, is that it rewards not only the best players mechanically, but also the best players here in the head, with the best players making you, and you get rewarded more as well by, for example, intervening a blind. It's just overall makes it just makes TBC a way better experience in arena, even though it has more RNG stuff in terms of stuns. For example, with blackout for shadow priests, with main stun for rogues and warriors, with Wind Fury, with Warrior Sword spec. Obviously, it has all of that bullshit, but overall, the experience is better. You lose a game because you're a rogue and the other guy is an orc, whatever, and you kidney shot him, he resists you, he turns around, he executes you, and you lose the game, and you're like, oh my god, this game is so bad, but then you queue again, and that doesn't happen, and you win and you feel better. Right now, I would say that when I win a game, and I'm a warlock obviously, but when I win a game, I don't feel really that hyped. I feel more like a relief because I know even though these teams are like 2K, they can win me while being in a shitty spot like they did, while being with really bad positioning, while not doing that much damage because they didn't do that much damage, while not pressing buttons, they can actually win because the paladin, like he did, can get a lot of wings procs and they are fine. It doesn't matter what I do. Like, doesn't matter if I fear the paladin, doesn't matter if I fear the shaman, um, when he pops. Doesn't matter that I fear the warrior before he pops. Is Arc Rages and then I fear him on his pop. Nothing matters. Legit, what I do in this matchup doesn't matter. And it's different in TBC. Everything you do matters. Even though you might not have the reward because of a resist, still everything you do matters. And I want to debunk a myth about games lasting too long. And if you think that games last too long in TBC, then right now, you shouldn't be able to play because the games in 3v3 actually last for less time than the current game. Now, when all the pro players start to try TBC, which I think they will, um, the games will last a bit longer because they will go for more drinks earlier than the current players that you see playing TBC. They will peel a bit better, so the healer can drink. So the game will probably drag out a bit more, but at the same time, it will still be faster than we currently have in Shadowlands. And the only way that games last super long, it's actually in 2v2, and it requires two druids for that to happen, kind of. But I rather have that than current 2v2 where a Windwalker just pops all cooldowns. I CC him throughout the cooldowns, but by the end of my DRs, so I triple fear, by the end of the fear he still has the cooldowns up, so you're like there because the cooldowns last too long. And this is another thing that is extremely good in TBC, which is cooldowns. Since you don't have this amount of cooldowns that currently we have in the game with a lot of defensives, personal defensives, a lot of external defensives, and a lot of offensive cooldowns, it means that everything you do, since you don't have them, everything you do, it matters because you don't have this window of 10 to 30 seconds where if you do things right during that window, you win. Regardless of what you do during the rest 5 minutes of the game. Um, so I think that's a better design. So everything you do in arena matters in TBC, and it's not as tight as, for example, a combustion window, where if you're facing a fire mage and you do everything right for 5 to 10 minutes, but then he pops combust and you do one mistake in that combust and they win, you don't really feel like you should lose, right? You did one mistake, probably the enemy team did more, and they still win because they have a fire mage who popped combust. I think that kind of stuff, it's what makes Shadowlands really bad, and it's what makes PvP overall really bad because the power of cooldowns versus the power of sustained damage, um, it's really inflated. So it doesn't really matter sometimes that you play extremely well against some teams if you don't play extremely well during those 10 seconds. So you can actually lose games of 5 to 10 minutes because you did one mistake in that 10-second window. While in TBC, you can also lose, obviously, like that if you do one mistake in a window of 10 seconds, but the mistake needs to be super high, like needs to be an insane mistake because overall the damage is more sustained, which means that every action, every button press, it's more important than currently. And yeah, that's about it. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I feel, and I told you guys about the Infernian tweet because I feel him. Like, currently I'm only playing Shadowlands because I have these amazing friends, and to be honest, me and the friend, which is my best friend in the game, just started to talk about TBC. What he's gonna level, what I'm gonna level, because I have a warlock and he has a rogue, obviously. But we started to talk about alts and yeah, what are we gonna play as alts, which is also really important. Another thing before I go is that it's so important that, and the big difference, like the huge difference is if you don't have that much time to play, logging into current World of Warcraft where you have to do Torghast, you have to do the campaign quest if you're still on that. Thank God I finished that. But you have to do these weekly quests. You have to do the weekly quests. You have to do them all if you want to. But you have to do so much stuff before you can actually just poop, 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 and queue up. That if you have really not that much time, it's like 2 or 3 hours of your gaming time that goes into doing stuff that we shouldn't do. And in arena, in the TBC, I mean, you just log in, you have the gear, you just queue arena. That's it. There's no chores for you to do, like legit none. Maybe if you are a warlock, you need to go farm shards, obviously. But besides that, there's nothing to do. And that's it, guys. Like I feel like, and I told this to my friend, I feel like when TBC comes, and depending on the arena system, I hope they use the old arena system with teams, with the battle groups, and you give titles according to those battle groups and according to the percentage of players. I think when TBC arenas come and get released, we'll see a decrease unless there's like a major tune patch for all the classes. On live, I think we will see more and more people go back to in time into TBC because the game is just it just makes sense. At some point, it's not even about losing or winning games in arena. It's about the game making sense. Where at the moment it doesn't. Back then, it does a lot more sense. It's not perfect. I know that. I've been saying that to my friends. The game is not perfect. When you will have times where you get triple mace stunned by a warrior without any kind of DR, and you're gonna be pissed. But you will queue in the next game, and you will forget about it. Just that simple. And then you get triple stun in that one, and you will get pissed, but queue the next one and won't think about the last one. uh, the game is just more fun, and I think that's the point I want to come. Like, I want to make is the game is just way more fun in TBC overall because you don't feel like you have to do all of this shit, and overall the game is just more fun in arena. Even though you have all of this oppressive shit, the game is just more fun, and yeah, guys, I think that's it. I just can't wait for BlizzCon Online to see the announcement, to see how they are gonna make this, and if I need to level another warlock, if I need to level stuff, because I do have a warlock, a warrior, and a shadow priest already at 58 and 60s. So I want to see how the transition is gonna run between TBC Classic, Classic Vanilla and TBC Classic, and hopefully, this is my hope, is that TBC Classic releases, OTK actually makes a tournament for arenas. The tournament gets more views than AWC, and finally Blizzard starts to work on live PvP, because I think the problem right now is that Blizzard and the Blizzard devs don't have any idea what they do. They don't care either, and they think PvP is a side game. When in my opinion, the PvP without just think. Okay, this is my last point about PvP. Just think about it. AWC got almost as many views as MDI without any tuning, without anyone caring for PvP. Imagine if you had two devs, which they Chris Kalecki told us we have, but we don't see them. Two devs that only did PvP changes every week. Imagine that. Honestly, I think if PvP was took care of and was nurtured and fucking loved by the by the dev team, PvP would actually have more exposure than PvE. It's way more fun to watch people play against each other and get all of these storylines between Waz and Looney. If you check Twitter, like between Waz and Looney, Looney it's banned obviously, but between Waz and Zip, I think between Kawhi and Cloud9 in the OTK and the move, like it's way more fun. You have all of these storylines and it's people against people. Um, or players against players. But yeah, guys, I'm gonna end the video. Sorry. Um, I just hope that TBC Classic improves the live game. That's my hope. I would love to keep playing live, but whenever TBC arrives and arena opens, I think I won't play live at all because. And by the way, guys, I don't like SLSL Warlock. I hate the spec. But when compared to the current strength and design of the Affliction Warlock, I will take SLSL every day of the week, and I hate it. It was my most hated spec, and I usually say I didn't play MOP because I didn't like the design. SLSL Warlock design was fucking terrible. But yeah, guys, that's it for today. I said that I was gonna talk about solo queue, and I'm still gonna do it tomorrow. But I just wanted to point this out because I saw the tweet from Infernian yesterday. We had this queue session just to gear up my priest and my holy paladin friends, and I just at some point I just didn't want to play, and it was really late in the night, and I was like, fuck me, like do I really want to play this game in 3v3? Like in 2s, at least dampening starts, and I feel like what I do actually matters. But in 3s, it's like fucking resident sleeper gameplay. But yeah, guys, I hope to see you in TBC. I hope. And if you want to know anything about TBC, just ask um, on the comments, and I will try to answer before my next video. And yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Peace.